The air in Port Sterling, Ohio, was thick and heavy, carrying the familiar weight of summer off the lake, a gritty blend of aging industry and damp earth. It was late afternoon, and the sky over the Cuyahoga River was turning a bruised purple, promising a thunderstorm the whole city had been holding its breath for. The brick streets, worn smooth by a century of steel trucks and factory shifts, gleamed in the oppressive humidity. Ornate, rusting iron fences stood guard over postage stamp yards where rose bushes drooped, their scent cloying in the stillness. Through this sweltering quiet, two figures moved with a fluid, disciplined ease. The man was Cole Turner. To the families sipping lemonade on their shaded front porches, he might have been mistaken for a local construction worker or a serious fitness buff. He was tall with the dense, powerful build of a man whose muscle was forged from necessity, not vanity. He wore a plain gray t-shirt and cargo shorts, practical in the heat. But Cole wasn't a local, not anymore. And he wasn't on vacation. He was on leave. There was a coiled energy in his posture, an economy of motion that was unnervingly precise. His eyes, the color of a stormy gray lake, never settled. They didn't just look. They scanned, assessed, and catalogued. Every alley was a potential choke point. Every flat roof was a possible vantage point. He was 34, a senior chief in the Naval Special Warfare Development Group, a Navy SEAL. And for the first time in 18 months, he was trying to be still. Beside him, pacing with disciplined grace, was Rook. Rook was a 4-year-old German Shepherd, but to call him a dog felt like an insult to his profession. His coat was a deep sable, his eyes black and fiercely intelligent. He was not a pet. He was a K9 partner, a teammate. He walked at Cole's left heel without a leash, his position unwavering, his gaze alternating between the path ahead and Cole's face, waiting for the slightest signal. Like his handler, he was a weapon currently set on safe. Cole had guided their walk away from the polished gleam of the newly revitalized downtown, with its boutique hotels and cheerful trolley tours. He led them further inland, toward the edges of the city where the postcard image of Port Sterling began to fray. This was his old neighborhood, or at least the ghost of it. The small, brick duplexes where he'd grown up, places that once buzzed with life and struggled with poverty, were now boarded up, gutted. Signs promised luxury lofts or artist studios. The corner market where he'd bought penny candy, run by a perpetually tired man named Mr. Henderson, was gone. In its place stood a sterile, glass-fronted juice bar where a smoothie cost $12. He paused for a moment, the contrast hitting him harder than he'd expected. The poverty had been harsh, desperate at times, but it had been real. It had been a community. This new, polished facade felt hollow. It was a sanitized wealth pushed up against the neighborhoods that hadn't yet been bulldozed, creating a stark, visible line between two worlds. He'd joined the Navy to escape the first, and now he found himself with no place in the second. Rook, sensing his handler's pause, stopped instantly, sitting on the cracked pavement and looking up at him, a silent question in his dark eyes. Cole reached down and scratched the thick fur behind the dog's ears. "Just ghosts, buddy," he murmured. "Let's move on." They were heading back toward the city's historic center as the light began to fail, the approaching storm casting long, strange shadows. The first distant clap of thunder vibrated through the soles of Cole's boots. The air grew tense, the pressure palpable. Rook's ears twitched, rotating slightly, sampling the air. He had felt the atmospheric shift long before Cole, but he was sensing something else, too. A discordant note in the city's rhythm. They turned onto a quiet side street, one of the few that still felt old. It was paved with original bricks, narrow and lined with gas-style lamps that were just beginning to flicker on. Halfway down the block was a pool of warm light, Miller's Bakery. It was an old establishment, a relic of the old Port Sterling, smelling of fresh bread and browned butter. And it was there that the stillness of their walk was broken. 3 men were clustered on the sidewalk, effectively blocking the entrance to the bakery. They weren't from the neighborhood. They were big, dressed in baggy jeans and stained t-shirts, their energy aggressive and out of place among the quiet storefronts. They hummed with a dangerous, nervous energy. Their focus was a woman. She was probably in her late 70s, slender and remarkably elegant. Her silver hair was pinned in a neat twist, and she wore a simple, tasteful linen dress. She held her head high with an ingrained air of authority. This was Esther Vance, though Cole didn't know her name. He just saw a woman who looked like she'd never had to raise her voice in her life, a portrait of old-world grace. And she was in trouble. "Give me the purse, lady," one of the men growled. He was the largest, with a poorly inked tattoo of a snarling bulldog crawling up his neck. He reached out and grabbed the strap of her vintage leather handbag. "Take your hands off me," she commanded. Her voice was surprisingly firm, but a tremor of fear ran through it, thin as a spider's thread. "Don't make this hard." Another one snarled, moving closer, crowding her against the brick wall of the bakery. The third, younger and jumpy, just watched, hands in his pockets, blocking her only escape route. The man with the bulldog tattoo jerked the strap. It was taut now. Esther stumbled forward, a small cry of alarm escaping her as she fought for balance. Cole stopped. 20 feet away, his entire demeanor changed. The casual tourist vanished. The soldier took his place. His body settled into a balanced, neutral stance, hands loose at his sides. He said nothing. He simply observed, his mind a cold, clear processor. 3 targets. Target 1, primary aggressor, has hands on the victim. Target 2, on the flank, is blocking. Target 3, lookout. Nervous. Beside him, Rook had gone still as well. He didn't growl. He didn't bark. He didn't need to. His body tensed, lowering slightly, his weight shifting to his haunches. A low, almost inaudible rumble began deep in his chest. His dark eyes were locked on the man holding the purse. Cole's hand moved, just a slight, subtle motion against his thigh. A silent command. Wait. The street was otherwise empty. The storm was now rumbling closer. The man with the tattoo raised his other hand, not to strike, but to menace. He loomed over the elderly woman, the purse strap strained to the breaking point. The word was a command, low and resonant, that cut through the humid tension. Enough. Cole Turner hadn't shouted. He didn't have to. The word carried an intrinsic weight, a core of absolute authority that made all 3 men freeze. They turned, their expressions shifting from predatory confidence to annoyance. The bulldog tattoo, clearly the leader, sneered. He took in Cole's simple t-shirt and shorts, sizing him up as a tourist playing hero. He saw a man. He didn't see the weapon. "Mind your own business, pal," the thug growled, turning back to Esther. "This ain't about you. Walk away." To punctuate his dismissal, he gave Esther a second shove, harder this time, trying to wrench the handbag from her grip. That shove was a mistake. Esther cried out, a thin, sharp sound of fear as she lost her footing on the uneven bricks. She fell backward, her hip and shoulder hitting the rain-slicked stones with a sickening thud. The strap on the old purse gave way. The world narrowed. For Cole, time seemed to slow. The city sounds, the distant thunder, the hiss of tires on wet pavement faded to a low roar. He saw the silver-haired woman hit the ground. He saw the man lunge for the fallen purse. That was the trigger. The line between intimidation and assault had been crossed. Cole gave the command. It wasn't a word. It was a fractional shift in his weight. A silent release. He moved. Rook moved. The 20 feet that separated them vanished. The man on the flank, target 2, saw the first blur of motion. He fumbled in his pocket. Maybe for a knife, maybe just a panicked reflex. He was far too slow. Cole was inside his reach. It wasn't a brawl. It was a dismantling. Cole's first strike wasn't a punch. It was a palm heel to the man's jaw. The wet, solid crack of it snapped his head back. Before the man could even register the pain, Cole's right knee came up in a brutal, precise arc into his thigh, aimed directly at the femoral nerve. The man's leg collapsed beneath him. He went down, his head hitting the bakery's brick wall with a hollow thump. 1. The leader, bulldog tattoo, had just scooped up the purse. He turned, eyes wide, realizing his profound miscalculation. He tried to swing the heavy bag as a weapon. Cole was already there, spinning out of the first man's fall. He ducked under the clumsy swing, his left hand clamping onto the man's wrist, controlling the weapon. His right elbow, driven by the full rotational force of his hips, struck the man just below the ribs, at the solar plexus. All the air in the man's body left in a desperate whoosh. He crumpled, dropping the purse, his body folding in on itself as he tried to take a breath that wouldn't come. 2. While Cole had moved right, Rook had moved left. The third man, the jumpy lookout, saw his 2 companions go down in the blink of an eye. His nerve shattered. He turned to run, pushing off the wall to sprint down the dark alley he'd been guarding. He made it 2 steps. Rook was a 90-pound missile of focused muscle and sable fur. He launched from Cole's side, covering the ground in silence, his paws making no sound on the wet bricks. He hit the running man square between the shoulder blades, a kinetic impact that sounded like a side of beef being dropped on concrete. The man was airborne for a split second before he slammed face first onto the bricks, the air driven from his lungs. The man groaned, trying to push himself up. Rook didn't bite. He didn't tear. He simply planted his full weight on the man's back, his two huge front paws pinning his shoulders, and lowered his head. And then, for the first time, he made a sound. It wasn't a bark. It was a low, visceral growl that seemed to vibrate up from the very stones of the street. It was the sound of controlled thunder, of imminent, devastating violence held back by a single thread. The man froze, a terrified whimper caught in his throat, the dog's hot breath on the back of his neck. 3. The entire engagement had taken less than 3 seconds. The street was suddenly, profoundly silent. The only sounds were the distant, approaching storm, the gasping of the man with the bulldog tattoo, and the low moan from the man slumped against the bakery wall. Cole stood at the center of the triangle, his breathing perfectly even. He was a point of stillness in the chaos he had just created. He looked down at the leader, who was clutching his ribs. "Get up," Cole commanded. His voice was calm. "Go." The man on the ground whimpered, looking from Cole to the dog. Cole gave a short, quiet whistle. Instantly, Rook released his pressure. He stepped back, sinking into a low, waiting crouch, his eyes never leaving the man on the ground. The man scrambled to his feet, slipping on the wet bricks, his hands held up in surrender. "We're going. We're going," he gasped, terror making his voice high and thin. The second man staggered to his feet, holding his jaw, a dark trickle of blood leaking from his mouth. The leader finally managed a ragged, painful breath. He looked at Cole, his eyes no longer filled with aggression, only a raw, primal fear. They hadn't just been beaten. They had been taken apart. The 3 men stumbled, half ran, and vanished into the dark alley, their footsteps frantic and uneven. Then, silence again. Cole let out a slow breath, the coiled tension leaving his shoulders. Rook, sensing the threat was gone, rose from his crouch and returned to Cole's left heel, his tail giving a single, satisfied thump as if nothing had happened. The first heavy, cold drops of rain began to splatter on the bricks, hissing as they hit the warm pavement. Cole turned to the woman. Esther Vance was pushing herself up on her elbows, her silver hair slightly askew. She was in shock, her breathing rapid, but her eyes were clear. She was watching Cole, not with fear, but with a sharp, astonished intelligence. Her gaze flicked from Cole to the huge, fearsome dog now sitting placidly at his side, looking up at its handler with absolute adoration. Cole knelt beside her, his movements gentle now, the coldness in his face replaced by concern. He picked up her purse from where the leader had dropped it. "Ma'am, are you hurt?" he asked, his voice soft. Esther took his offered hand, and he helped her steadily to her feet. She brushed off her linen dress, her dignity returning with remarkable speed. I don't think so," she breathed, her voice only trembling slightly. She looked down the dark alley where the men had fled, then back at Cole. "My heavens, you and this magnificent creature, you move like lightning." "Just helping a neighbor," Cole said simply, handing her the purse. Its broken strap dangled uselessly. "You should get inside. The storm is here." The storm hit at midnight. A violent, cleansing purge of lightning and sound that scoured the city clean. The next morning was brilliant. The air scrubbed of its oppressive humidity, leaving behind the crisp, clean scent of ozone and wet pavement. Cole was used to operating on minimal sleep. He and Rook had been running since 5 a.m., pounding the wet pavement of Edgewater Park, watching the sun rise over a placid, slate-gray harbor. It was how he managed his leave, burning off the restless, kinetic energy that had no outlet in the civilian world. He wasn't in a hotel. He'd rented a small, furnished carriage house on a quiet, tree-lined street in a respectable, but by no means wealthy, neighborhood. It was private, defensible, and above all, anonymous. He was cooling down in the small brick courtyard, stretching his quads, while Rook lapped water from a bowl. The heavy iron gate was latched. He was shirtless, his torso and arms a faint, silvery roadmap of scars from a life lived on the edge, his skin slick with sweat. He heard the car before he saw it, not the rumble of a pickup or the whine of a local sedan. This was a low, expensive, nearly silent purr. A black Lincoln Navigator glided to a stop outside his gate, its polished chrome gleaming in the morning sun. It was as out of place in this neighborhood as a battleship in a swimming pool. Cole didn't react, just continued his stretch, his eyes tracking the vehicle. Rook, however, stood, his body relaxed but alert, his head tilted. The driver's door opened, but it was the passenger door that commanded attention. A woman emerged. She was in her late 20s and seemed to defy the Ohio heat, encased in a perfectly tailored, ivory pantsuit. Her dark hair was pulled back in a severe, elegant bun, and her eyes were hidden by large, black sunglasses. She carried an expensive leather briefcase. She was, Cole thought, pure armor. She approached the gate, the heels of her shoes clicking decisively on the sidewalk. She looked from the modest carriage house to Cole, and for a split second, her professional mask faltered. She had clearly been expecting something, or someone, else. Mr. Turner. Her voice was crisp, modulated, with the polished cadence of an expensive East Coast education. Cole picked up a towel from an iron chair and wiped his face, moving slowly toward the gate. Rook moved with him, stopping just behind his left leg. I'm Cole Turner. Can I help you? The woman seemed unnerved by the dog, whose intelligent gaze was fixed on her. She composed herself. My name is Ava Harrison. I'm Esther Vance's granddaughter. Cole nodded slowly, saying nothing, waiting. I'm also the executive director of the Vance Family Foundation, she continued, her tone all business. I'm here on my grandmother's behalf. She wanted to express her profound gratitude for your intervention last night. Is she all right? Cole asked. The question was genuine, cutting through her prepared speech. She's bruised but stable, Ava said, a flicker of annoyance in her voice at being interrupted. She's resting, which brings me to why I'm here. My grandmother is a pillar of this community. What happened last night was unfortunate, a random act of violence that we are handling. She opened her briefcase and withdrew a long, cream-colored envelope. This is a token of our appreciation, a significant one. We hope it conveys the depth of our gratitude for your assistance and your discretion. She held out the envelope. It wasn't a thank you. It was a transaction. It was a settlement. Cole looked at the check, then back at her face. He made no move to take it. Ms. Harrison, I don't need a token. I just needed to know she was okay. Ava's smile remained, but her eyes, hidden behind the sunglasses, tensed. Mr. Turner, please. This is how we handle these matters. The foundation is extremely grateful. Consider it a consultation fee for your services. I don't consult, Cole said, his voice dropping slightly. It wasn't cold, but it was firm. And I'm not for hire. Rook, sensing the subtle shift in his handler's tone, let out a soft huff through his nose. Ava Harrison took an involuntary step back. She was a woman accustomed to control, to problems that could be solved with a checkbook. The man in front of her, sweat-soaked, scarred, and backed by a 90-pound animal, was not a problem she knew how to solve. I'm afraid you don't understand, she began, her sharp authority beginning to fray. No, I think I do, Cole interrupted, his voice still quiet. You're here to manage a crisis. You think I'm a liability. The check is to make me go away quietly. I'm not interested. A tense, awkward silence stretched between them. A flush crept up Ava's neck. Ava, for heaven's sake, put the checkbook away. You're embarrassing me. The new voice was warm, familiar, and full of fond exasperation. A slightly dented, dark blue Subaru had pulled up behind the Lincoln, unnoticed by either of them. Esther Vance emerged from the passenger side, waving away her driver's attempts to help. She looked sore, a distinct, dark bruise blooming on her left cheekbone, but her eyes were bright and full of life. Grandmother. Ava spun around, her composure completely shattered. You should be resting. What are you doing here? I'm here to thank the man who saved my life, Ava, not to manage him, Esther said tartly. She limped straight to the gate, ignoring her granddaughter. She smiled warmly at Cole. Mr. Turner, my apologies for my granddaughter. She's brilliant, but she is all the warmth of a balance sheet. Grandmother, please, Ava hissed, mortified. It's good to see you on your feet, ma'am, Cole said, a small smile touching his lips for the first time. Please, call me Esther. She looked at Rook. And this magnificent hero. What is his name? Rook. Very fitting. Esther's smile faded, and her expression grew serious. I'm here, Mr. Turner, because what Ava told you is not the whole truth. She believes in managing problems. I believe in confronting them, and we, sir, have a very large problem. Ava sighed, pinching the bridge of her nose behind her sunglasses. Grandmother, this is not the place. We shouldn't be discussing foundation business on the street with a stranger. He is not a stranger. He is the man, thanks to whom I am alive to be annoyed by you today, Esther retorted. She turned her full attention back to Cole. Those men were not random muggers, Mr. Turner. They were sent. Cole's posture, which had relaxed slightly, tensed again. Sent by who? A man named Julian Croft, Esther said, her voice laced with disgust. He's a property developer, a vulture, to be more precise. He's been buying up properties all over the city, tearing down history to build glass boxes, and he wants one of mine. Ava stepped forward. Grandmother, this is a legal matter. I am handling it. You're handling it with injunctions and restraining orders, and he's handling it with thugs, Esther shot back. Mr. Croft wants the old Naval Ordnance building, the one on the north side. He wants to turn it into luxury condos, but our foundation runs the community center there. Cole's face, which had been passive, suddenly sharpened with interest. He knew that building. He knew that neighborhood. It was his. He wants to displace 200 children, Mr. Turner, Esther said, her voice low but fierce. He offered us a fortune. We refused. He threatened us. We ignored him. And last night he escalated. So, you came here to warn me? Cole said. It wasn't a question. No, Mr. Turner, Esther said, her eyes locking with his. I came here to hire you. Ava gasped. Grandmother, no. That is the worst idea you've ever had. He's a soldier. He's uncontrollable. We need lawyers, not a weapon. Cole looked at Ava, his expression unreadable. Esther ignored her granddaughter's protest. My offer is not a check, Mr. Turner. It's a job. I want you to be my head of security, but more than that, I want you at the center. I want you to teach those kids. They're surrounded by men like the ones you met last night. They need to see what real strength looks like, what real honor looks like. She paused, her gaze unwavering. My granddaughter thinks you're a hammer. I think you're a shield. Those kids need a shield. Will you help us? The drive north took them out of the postcard and into the reality. Ava had insisted on driving. Her black Lincoln, a silent, arrogant intruder in the neighborhoods Cole knew. They crossed the invisible line where the quaint brick roads gave way to cracked asphalt and the grand pastel mansions were replaced by rows of shotgun houses and low-slung industrial buildings. The air smelled different here, less like blooming roses and more like diesel and marshland. Cole sat in the passenger seat, a silent, imposing presence in her pristine leather interior. Rook sat in the back, head erect, his breathing even and quiet. He left no hair, made no sound, but his presence seemed to fill the car. Ava gripped the steering wheel, her knuckles white. She had argued against this all morning. Her grandmother had been resolute, and Cole had simply agreed. His only condition was that Rook went everywhere with him. The center is housed in the old Naval Supply building, Ava said, her voice cool and professional. She was back in her armor, a sharp, charcoal gray pantsuit. The foundation acquired it 15 years ago. It's basic. We offer after-school tutoring, a meal program, and basic sports. Frankly, it's a financial black hole. But my grandmother is attached to it. She's attached to the people, Cole said, not a question, but a statement. He was looking out the window, his expression unreadable. People are an unpredictable asset class, Ava replied coolly. She guided the Lincoln into a chain-link fence lot beside a massive, 3-story brick building. It was old, utilitarian, a product of a forgotten war. Its windows were huge, many of them cracked or boarded over. But it wasn't dead. The sound of a basketball pounding on a worn hardwood floor and the distant shouts of children's laughter echoed from within. As they got out, a man emerged from the wide front doors. He was in his 60s, African-American with a wiry frame that spoke of a lifetime of hard work. He wore paint-splattered overalls and a kind, tired smile. This was Henry, the heart and soul of the center. Ms. Harrison, good to see you, he said, his voice a warm, raspy baritone. He wiped his dirty hands on a rag. His eyes went immediately to Cole and then to Rook. His smile didn't falter, but his gaze sharpened, assessing. And you've brought company. Henry, this is Cole Turner and Rook, Ava said, her tone clipped. My grandmother has retained Mr. Turner as a security consultant for the foundation. He'll be assessing the facility. Retained. Consultant. Facility. The words were sterile, corporate. Cole stepped forward, ignoring the job title, and offered his hand. Henry, good to meet you. I'm just here to see the place. Henry took his hand, his grip surprisingly strong. He looked Cole dead in the eye, then nodded slowly, a silent understanding passing between the two men. Then he looked at Rook. He good with kids? He's good with everyone, Cole said. He's on duty. All right, then. Come on in. Don't mind the chaos. It's just Tuesday. The moment Cole stepped inside, the smell hit him. A familiar, nostalgic mix of floor wax, old sweat, and cheap, sugary juice. The walls were painted appealing, bright yellow. Children's paintings were taped everywhere. He was home. This place was a mirror image of the boys and girls club he had all but lived in as a kid. The place that had kept him off the street corners, where a retired boxer had taught him discipline long before the Navy did. He felt an instant, powerful connection to the building. This wasn't a financial black hole. It was a dike holding back the ocean. Ava walked beside him, her heels clicking on the linoleum, a clipboard in her hand. She was the picture of detached oversight, pointing out structural flaws, fire code violations, and inefficient energy use. Cole wasn't listening. He was watching. He saw the art room, where a young woman tried to manage 10 kids with 3 tubes of paint. He saw the cafeteria, where a cook was stirring a massive pot of chili that, for some, would be their only hot meal of the day. And he saw Ava, her face tight with a controlled, sterile disapproval. She didn't see life, she saw liability. They came to the gym. It was the heart of the center, a vast, echoing space with a scarred wood floor. At its center, a dozen teenagers were playing a chaotic game of basketball. Their shouts echoed off the high, steel-beamed ceiling. The game was rough. One tall, skinny kid with angry eyes and a loud mouth was clearly in charge. He barreled into a smaller boy, knocking him to the floor. "Get up, scrub!" the tall kid yelled, grabbing the ball. "This ain't daycare." "Darius, that's enough." Henry called from the doorway, his voice weary. "Play right or sit down." "Darius," the tall kid, just sneered. "Whatever, old man." He slammed the basketball hard against the wall, his aggression radiating in waves. The other kids backed off, intimidated. The smaller boy scrambled to his feet, trying to look tough, his eyes bright with unshed tears. Ava tensed beside Cole, her body language screaming crisis. She looked at Cole, her expression a mixture of dread and "I told you so." She expected the hammer. She expected the seal to wade in, to yell, to threaten, to escalate. Cole did nothing of the sort. His entire demeanor remained relaxed. He simply unzipped the small tactical pack he wore and took out a water bottle. He set the pack on the bleachers. Then he looked at Rook and tapped 2 fingers against the bag. "Watch." Rook instantly left his heel and sat directly in front of the bag. Ramrod straight, focused, and utterly immobile. He was now guarding it. The effect on the gym was immediate. The ball pounding stopped. The shouting died. Every single kid, including Darius, turned to stare at the dog. Cole, seemingly oblivious, walked onto the court, his boots silent. He didn't go toward Darius. He went to the smaller boy, who was rubbing his elbow. "You play often?" Cole asked, his voice conversational. The boy, startled, just nodded. Darius, his audience stolen by a man and a dog, bristled. "Who are you?" he challenged, posturing. "This is my court." Cole finally turned his attention to him. He didn't confront. He didn't challenge. He just looked at him, his gray eyes calm and steady. "Is it?" Cole said. Then he looked up at the rusty, warped basketball hoop. "That rim is off by at least 2 degrees. It's why your jump shot keeps pulling left." Darius's jaw dropped. "What? No, it's not. My shot's fine." "Is it?" Cole repeated. He looked back at the smaller boy. "What's your name?" "Leo," the boy whispered. "Leo, get the ball. Show me your shot." Darius started to intervene, but Cole just held up a hand, not threateningly, just a simple, non-negotiable gesture to stop. Darius froze, uncertain. Leo, emboldened, scrambled for the ball. He took a shot. It hit the side of the rim, pulling left. "See," Cole said. "It's the rim." He turned to Darius. "You're a good player, but you're compensating for bad equipment. You're building a bad habit." Darius was completely disarmed. He had been ready for a fight, for a challenge to his dominance. He was not prepared for technical analysis. From the doorway, Ava watched, her clipboard forgotten at her side. Her mind, so quick with numbers and legal briefs, struggled to process the scene. She had expected a collision. Instead, she was witnessing a recalibration. Cole hadn't raised his voice. He hadn't threatened. He had changed the entire dynamic of the room in 30 seconds. He had neutralized the bully, not with force, but by shifting his focus. He had empowered the victim, and he had done it all with a quiet authority she had never seen before. A couple of the younger kids crept off the bleachers, drawn by Rook's silent, disciplined presence. They stopped a few feet away, whispering. Can we pet him?" one little girl asked. Cole glanced over. "Ask him, not me." The girl looked at the huge dog. "Can I pet you, Mr. Dog?" Rook's tail gave a single thump against the floor. Cole nodded. The little girl crept forward, holding out her hand. Rook leaned his big head into her palm, and the girl giggled, a clean, happy sound that cut through the gym's tension. Ava watched as Cole turned back to Darius, talking to him in a low voice about torque and angles. She watched as Rook sat patiently, allowing 2 more kids to stroke his thick fur. She had been wrong. This man wasn't a hammer. He was, as her grandmother had said, a shield. And in that moment, Ava Harrison felt the first crack in her perfectly constructed armor. Julian Croft did not like surprises. His office was a testament to this fact. It was a glass box on the 20th floor of the newest, tallest building in Port Sterling, a building he owned. The view was panoramic, stretching from the serene Cooper River Bridge to the dark, clustered rooftops of the north side. He liked looking down. It reinforced his position in the world. Croft himself was a man of expensive, predictable tastes. He wore a sharkskin Brioni suit, a gold watch heavy enough to anchor a small boat, and a faint, permanent sneer. He was not old Port Sterling money like the Vance family. He was new money, sharp and predatory. And at the moment, he was extremely annoyed. He did what? Croft's voice was a low growl. He was staring at the man with the bulldog tattoo from the bakery, whose name, in a staggering failure of imagination, was Diesel. Diesel was standing awkwardly on the Persian rug, his jaw still visibly bruised. He just talked to the kid, Mr. Croft, Diesel stammered. The big dog, the kids, they just listen. He's there every day. Croft turned from the window to face him. I paid you and your associates to deliver a message to an old woman. You were neutralized by 1 man and a dog. And now that same man is setting down roots in my property. It ain't your property yet, boss. Croft moved faster than Diesel would have expected. He crossed the office and slammed his hand down on his massive mahogany desk, the sound echoing like a gunshot in the sterile room. Do not correct me, he hissed. That old woman and her spreadsheet jockey granddaughter have been a thorn in my side for a year. Now they have a bodyguard with a K9. This seal is a complication. He paced, thinking. The direct approach had failed. The legal approach was a stalemate. The time for subtlety was over. It was time to remind the neighborhood, and the Vance family, who really held the power. I don't want him hurt. Not yet, Croft said, a slow, ugly smile spreading across his face. Soldier types are public relations nightmares. But the building, the community spirit is a fragile thing. I want you to break it. I want them too scared to go back. Diesel's own nervous sneer returned. This, he understood. What's the plan, boss? Tonight. No fires. Fires bring investigators. Just a redecoration. Break every window. Steal every computer. Make it a place no parent would dare send their child. Let them see that their shield can't protect them. The next morning, the air was crisp and cool, carrying the first hints of autumn. Cole pulled his old pickup into the community center parking lot. Rook sat alert in the passenger seat. A moment later, the Lincoln glided in beside him. It had been a week. A routine had formed. Ava no longer wore her corporate armor to the center. Today, she wore dark jeans, riding boots, and a simple cream-colored sweater. Her hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail. She was even carrying a cardboard tray with 2 cups of coffee. Morning, she said, her smile small but genuine. She handed him one. Henry says the decaf you make in the break room tastes like burnt disappointment. Henry is a wise man, Cole said, taking the cup. The easy gesture, the shared coffee, felt more intimate than a handshake. He'd seen the change in her. The more time she spent at the center, the more the spreadsheets seemed to fade, replaced by the names of kids. Rook, seeing Ava, gave a polite tail wag and nudged her hand for a scratch, which she gave without her previous hesitation. My grandmother is almost cheerful about her bruises, Ava said, shaking her head. She's using them as visual aids in her fundraising letters. Cole chuckled. She's tougher than any recruit I ever trained. They walked toward the heavy front doors, the familiar sound of basketballs conspicuously absent. The morning was too quiet. Cole felt it first. He stopped 10 feet from the entrance, his head tilted. Something's wrong, he said, his voice flat. What? Ava asked, stopping beside him. What is it? It's too quiet. Rook felt it, too. A low rumble started in his chest, his body going taut. Cole set his coffee on the hood of his truck. Stay behind me. He moved to the front door. It had been jimmied, the heavy-duty lock was busted and broken. The wood around the knob was splintered. He pushed it open. The lobby was a glittering sea of shattered glass. The reception desk was overturned. The receptionist's computer was gone. Graffiti, ugly and profane, was spray-painted in black across the mural the kids had painted last summer. Ava's hand flew to her mouth, a choked, horrified gasp. "Oh my God." Cole said nothing. He stepped inside, his boots crunching on the glass, Rook moving at his heel in a low, tactical crouch. "Henry," he called out. "Henry. In here." The voice was hollow. They found him in the new computer lab, or what was left of it. Every one of the 8 donated computers was gone. Wires were cut, monitors smashed. The art room was next. Paint was dumped all over the floor. The kids' clay sculptures were smashed. Their paintings were ripped from the walls and torn to shreds. But the gym was the worst. It was an act of pure hatred. The basketball hoops had been torn from the backboards. The bleachers were overturned, and in the center of the court, the word Scrubs was painted in huge, dripping letters. Ava stood in the doorway, her body trembling. Her clipboard was gone. Her composure was gone. This wasn't an item on a budget. This was a violation. "He did this," she whispered, her voice shaking with a cold, rising fury. "Croft, that monster. He did this." Henry, looking 10 years older, sat down on an overturned bench, his head in his hands. "They took everything, Cole. The laptops, the projector, even the food from the pantry. They took the food." A few of the kids, including Darius and Leo, had started to arrive. They stopped at the gym door, their usual morning energy gone, replaced by a stunned, fearful silence. Darius, his tough guy facade completely gone, just stared, his eyes wide. This was the moment. This was the breaking point Croft had wanted. Ava finally broke. "I'm calling the police. I'm calling the media. I'm going to freeze his assets. I'm going to ruin him. He can't do this. He can't." Her voice cracked, a single, angry tear tracing a path down her cheek. She paced, her hands clenched, vibrating with a frantic, helpless rage. Cole watched her for a second. Then he turned to the kids. He was the calm in the storm. His face was like stone, his eyes cold and assessing. He wasn't panicking. He wasn't even angry. He was processing. "Darius," he said, his voice cutting through Ava's frantic whispers. Darius looked up, startled. "Go to the utility closet. See if they missed the brooms. Leo, you go with him. Find the dustpans."